Hello, everyone. Thanks for making the time to join us this afternoon. My name is Michael. I'm the events coordinator and publicist at Annie Bloom's Books. For those of you who aren't familiar with the store, we're located in Portland, Oregon, in the heart of Multnomah Village, where we've been around for 43 years now. We're open on weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and weekends from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our website is always open. You can go there right now if you like, and I'm going to put in the chat the link to the website here, which features both of the authors' books. We'd really appreciate it if you placed an order with us. For those, even if you're not in the area, you can select a couple of different delivery methods or shipping methods. If you are nearby, then we do local delivery and also, of course, in-store pickup and curbside pickup. We have some great events coming up in the near future. On Tuesday, the 12th at 5 p.m., we have local kids author Carrie Tillotson. Her new book is Counting to Bananas. 2 days after that, we have a poetry reading with Linda Ferguson and Mimi Gurman. They're both local poets. And so the press is also local, the Poetry Box. They'll be reading together on that Thursday. And at the end of the month, Emmeline Duncan, local mystery author with Double Shot Death. She's an amateur sleuth who runs a coffee cart in Portland. That's going to be on Tuesday, April 26th at 7 p.m. And then we have some more great events in May. So you can check our calendar for that. This afternoon, or depending on where you are tonight, we have Los Angeles author Sana Balagamwala in conversation with Karen Karbo. Well, let me admit another person here. And there'll be a Q&A at the end of the reading conversation. You can feel free to type questions into the chat and I'll read those to either or both of the authors, or you can click on the little blue hand icon, I think it's blue, that's in the reactions menu. It's down at the bottom of the screen if you're daring enough to come on screen and ask a question live. Let me tell you about Sana's debut novel, House Number 12, Block Number 3. Nadia has changed. She has been waking up in the middle of the night in fits of anxiety, avoiding her friends and family, and skipping her university classes. With the recent death of her father, Haji Ramat, Nadia's condition has further spiraled. There is no acceptable diagnosis for her behavior and speculations abound. She may have a rare disease. She may be possessed by a jinn, or perhaps she is inclined to madness. Whatever the cause of this mysterious affliction, Zainab, I think I just butchered that even though I just learned how to pronounce it, Nadia's mother is at pains to keep it hidden from the community at large. She is worried Nadia will be labeled as mad, and she knows all too well the taboos that mental illness brings with it. While the country tethers on political unrest, let's admit Adam here, political unrest, and Nadia seems to get worse by the day, the family searches desperately for the cause of and the cure for their daughter's mysterious malady. House Number 12, Block Number 3, the home that has sheltered the Ramat family for decades, narrates and recollects past events, trying to absolve itself of the burden it feels of being privy to the real reason for Nadia's turmoil, but not being able to do anything about it. Sana Balagamwala grew up in Karachi, Pakistan. She studied English literature and language at the University of Southern California. She has a master's in education from Loyola Marymount University. She is also pursuing a master's in creative writing at the University of Cambridge. House Number 12, Block Number 3 is her first novel. Before embarking on her writing career, she taught middle school history and literature. Sana loves old buildings, avoids lizards, that must be tough in LA, and appreciates a good cup of coffee. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and 2 boys. Karen's most recent book is In Praise of Difficult Women. Smart, sassy, and unapologetically feminine, In Praise of Difficult Women is an ode to the bold and charismatic women of modern history. Best-selling author Karen Karbo spotlights the spirited rule breakers and charted their way with little regard for expectations. Amelia Earhart, Helen Gurley Brown, Edie Sedgwick, Hillary Clinton, Amy Poehler, and Shonda Rhimes, among others. Their lives, imperfect, elegant, messy, glorious, provide inspiration and instruction for the new age of feminism we have entered. Karbo distills these lessons with wit and humor, examining the universal themes that connect us to each other, connect us to each of these mesmerizing personalities today. Success and style, love and authenticity, daring and courage. Being difficult, Karbo reveals, might not make life easier, but it can make it more fulfilling, whatever that means to you. Karen Karbo is the author of 14 award-winning novels, memoirs, and works of nonfiction. She is a recipient of the National Endowment of the Arts Fellowship in Fiction, an Oregon Book Award, for creative nonfiction and the winner of the General Electric Younger Writer Award. Recently, she was one of 24 writers selected for the Amtrak residency. Sounds interesting. Welcome, Sana and Karen.
Hello. Hi, Sana.
Hello. Hi, Karen. How's it? How is it? It's very late where you are, right? In France?
Yes. Through the miracle of Zoom and technology, I'm able to come to you from our new home in the south of France. So it's 11:08 here. Fortunately, I'm a night owl, and I wouldn't have missed this for the world. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, we're going to have a conversation, but I think first you're going to read a little snippet of it,
Yes.
correct? Kind of give people a sense of how unique it is and how mesmerizing.
Thank you. Okay, I'll read. So I'm reading from chapter 1, and yes, that's it. I'm reading from chapter 1. Nadia is sitting up in bed, her back against the low wooden headboard, her head buried in her lap. Her hair is uncombed and matted. Even though it is not cold, she shivers under a thick woolen blanket that Zainab has draped around her. At intervals, she exhales, hollow, empty coughs. Appa goes to her. She has seen this before. We have all seen this before. Salam, beta, she says. Nadia digs her thumbnail into her cuticles and picks at the raw skin. A tremor convulses through her body. Appa sits down next to her and takes her hand, squeezing it tight to stop it from trembling. She strokes her head gently. It's all right, she says. You're all right. The elderly woman retrieves an assortment of objects from her bed and lays them on the bedside table. A packet of herbs, a 2-inch rectangular strip of paper, a black square cloth, and some string. On the strip of paper, she transcribes a prayer for wellness in precise Arabic script. She folds it into a square, 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. She wraps the paper with the cloth and secures it with string, as though wrapping a miniature gift. She gives the amulet to the young girl, who is still trembling. Put it under your pillow, Appa says. Nadia glances up. She has her mother's eyes, green with glints of gray. When Nadia was born and opened her eyes to the world for the first time, the nurses had marveled. Among a sea of babies with dark eyes, her eyes were 1 in 1,000. She's won the genetic lottery, the nurse had remarked. Prayers were said, and 2 goats had been sacrificed to protect her from Nazar, evil eye. Now, Nadia's eyes are vacuous, and her hair is thinning. Clumps lay on her pillow, as though someone comes and pulls it out in the middle of the night while she sleeps. I don't want to see him, Nadia says softly. She has run out of tears, but sorrow has not had its fill. There are dark caverns beneath her eyes, and her cheeks are sunken like caves. I cannot bear to see her like this. A 20-year-old needs to be vibrant and delirious at the promise of life. She should not be like this, not like an old spinster, broken and bearing the burdens of the world. There is no one here, Zainab says to her daughter. It is just me and Appa. You had a nightmare again. I don't know if Nadia hears her mother, but her eyes dart around the room like an injured rabbit hiding from a wolf. You're okay, Appa speaks softly. You don't have to see anyone. To Zainab, she says, bring some warm water. I'll make her some tea. It will help her anxiety. Zainab withdraws from the room and returns with a mug of warm water. Appa drops a packet of herbs into it and stirs vigorously. Some particles dissolve. The big bits and leaves dance about on the surface. Here, take a sip, Appa says. Nadia drinks. Some more, beta, at least half, Appa prompts. Zainab turns all the wall sconce. The yellow gleam divulges the disarray in Nadia's room. It has been a few weeks since it has been cleaned. She won't let anyone into her room since her father has passed away. The desk in the corner by the window is stacked with books and schoolwork, overdue, forgotten. Behind the book, slightly visible, are scribbles on the wall. When she is alone, Nadia makes notes in notebooks, and sometimes on the walls. The light reveals the worry lines that dart across the young girl's forehead. She winces in discomfort, as though it will betray her secrets, and covers her face with the blanket. It is too much for me, she says, the light. Zainab flicks the switch off, and again we are left in the dark. Appa talks to Nadia and reads out prayers. An hour passes, and I see the angst that simmers in the young girl's eyes begin to subside. Perhaps it is prayer that soothes her. Perhaps it is Appa's presence. Nadia closes her eyes and drifts into sleep. Zainab and Appa talk in hushed voices while she sleeps. They discuss the possibility of the jinn possessing her body. Why else would she be this way, Zainab wonders. Why else would she waver between sanity and madness, break into anxious fits of fear and tears with no reason, refuse to leave her room or meet with anyone? I think too that sometimes a jinn has taken over the girl, but I know things that Zainab doesn't, and her ignorance is a burden I must bear. Daylight dissipates the early morning darkness, and the streets begin to come back to life. Neighbors out for a brisk morning walk to ward off cardiovascular disease. Chowkidars perched outside gates on rattan stools, drinking their morning tea. And Mrs. Khalid next door buying okra. They all pretend to go about their day and not to notice, but they see Appa leaving. They've seen her come and go before, and they know that Appa visits us at house number 12 on block number 3 because Nadia has gone mad. Thank you.
That's just, that is lovely. And, we discussed this before today, and I had said, please read something where we meet the I narrator in your story, because I think you've done something extraordinary, which is the narrator of your novel is the house that they all live in. And could you, I when I first met you, when was that? In Oregon?
Oregon, in I think 2019.
Yeah, because it was right before actually we had moved to France, and I had read some of your work, or you had read it aloud, and I was just I said, this is a novel, this is a fantastic idea, and Godspeed in terms of pulling this off, which
Thank
you have
you.
done wonderfully. But could you talk about, first of all, I guess this is a two-part question, choosing to have the house narrate the story as opposed to, for example, Nadia, because that might make the most sense. And then also, once you made that decision, the difficulties or the challenges of bringing that to life.
Okay, so I'll try to answer both parts. The first one, I always feel that as humans, we have a very important relationship with the earth, and then by default, by the places that shelter us. And I feel my home was always such a big character in my life, and the memories connected with my childhood are often connected with my home and the things in the home. So like a lace curtain in my grandmother's house, or that orange teacup that my grandfather drank his tea from, the coffee table with a little chipped corner, the window in which the grill was a little bit rusted, which I used to look through. So I feel like those little things are what anchor our memories, and they kind of, and life is really just a stringing together of all those memories. So I feel like our homes are such important characters in our life for that reason. So that was kind of the start of, I wanted to use the home as a narrator. But I also wanted a narrator that's omniscient, but doesn't have control and power, because as humans, we often feel so powerless in situations. We can see what's happening, we know something is about to go wrong or something has gone wrong, but we don't have control and we don't have the power to change it. So I wanted to sort of tap into that feeling of omniscience, but powerlessness. And I think choosing the house as the narrator helped me achieve both those things. And the second part was, what was some of the difficulties in choosing the house?
Yeah, once you made the decision, with all writing, there are always, once we decide to do something, immediately all the kind of formal concerns present themselves.
Right.
I think it's brilliant to, what you just said about being able to have an omniscient character, but also a character that can't do anything. I think oftentimes, especially in sort of more traditional novels, we want characters who might not otherwise have agency to have agency. But if you're a house, obviously, unless you're, unless it's your metaphysical haunted house, you have no agency. So anyway, so that's brilliant. But that said, how did you then decide what the actual role of the house would be? Because obviously, and I don't, Michael read a wonderful description of the book, but I don't want to give too much away because I want everyone to buy the book. Then how did you go about actually making the house the narrator chapter to chapter?
One of the things that was tricky was I didn't want it to turn into like a Disney story where there's a house that talks. So I would write a little and then I would pull back, and I would write a little and I would pull back. And I workshopped a lot of the parts of this novel. And sometimes I would hear feedback that the house is not working as a novel narrator. And then sometimes I would hear that it's working really well and it's really great and you can go with it. So I kind of, a couple of times I did consider abandoning it and just changing the narrator to Nadia or to her mom. So I wrote out a chapter in a different perspective. And I felt that it just wasn't doing the same thing because it wasn't the home and it didn't have this kind of like sort of omniscience, right? Where the home has these trees and there's a worry that maybe something supernatural lives in the trees. And there's a little bit of the house feels like a nurturing mother towards like a nurturing presence in this family's life, but also it can't help them at all. It knows secrets which it can't share. So if I change the narrator to anyone else, I would lose those things. So I try to balance not making it too Disney and also getting all those things across, those feelings that I wanted the novel to have.
Something else that I think is so interesting, and it's very interesting to me as someone who lives abroad now. I am an immigrant in another country now. And I was struck by, and maybe you can talk more about this, that the family came to the house. It was 15 years after the partition of India and Pakistan. And so it was historically a very important time in those two countries and sort of establishing their own boundaries. And so for this family, so, to have it be only 15 years after this huge sort of cataclysmic event, national event for the countries to find a home, it feels even more powerful than, I don't know, I'm an American, now I'm going to go buy my house in the suburbs. I mean, it sort of symbolically, in the way that the house embraced them, felt kind of more profound or something. Could you speak to that? I mean, was that part of it? Is that because the role of Pakistan and Karachi plays such a big part of the story as well?
Definitely. I think the novel started as a very personal project. While I lived in Los Angeles, also an immigrant, I lost both my grandparents in Karachi. And I remember when they were younger, they would talk so often about how they had moved from India because they lived through partition, both my grandfathers. So it would come up in conversation. So I would always collect little bits of information. It was always the narrative of our family, how our grandparents moved, and sometimes they would share information and sometimes they wouldn't. But just through the stories they would always tell, it was very obvious that they left a lot behind when they left India. And they left in a big hurry and they didn't know whether they would make it back or not. They didn't even know if they would make it safely to Karachi or not. And then once them and many other families of that generation, once they did move here, they often had no place to live. So they lived in refugee camps and then they lived in wherever they could. Like I heard a story that they lived in a big abandoned factory, like 10 families were living in there for months till they could find a home. So the idea of getting your own home in a new country is such an important part of the narrative and of the stories that I would hear from not only my grandparents, but many other men and women of that generation when I interviewed them for research for this novel. and it kept coming up, home, and we didn't have a place, and we left everything behind, and
Yeah.
we buried our gold and our in India, and then we hoped one day we'd go back to get it. So of course, home and finding a home and finding a safe place after you leave everything behind was so relevant. And I think even now, with all the crises, the refugees from Palestine, from Ukraine, from Kashmir, it's always relevant to have a home and a place to shelter.
And I really felt that in the book, and it made me think about my own, whatever my own response is to home and making a home. But it is so, your command of all of the details of the house and where everything takes place. You can really feel that valuing of the house. Tell me what, and I was trying to guess if the house was your house, or there were just bits and pieces of it that were your house. Like, to what degree, I guess, is the house and then sort of the rest of the story autobiographical?
So the story is a lot of, so like I was mentioning before, I collected a lot of stories from my grandparents, from my parents, from aunts and uncles, from books that I read about that time period, from things I heard growing up about, my grandmother's cousin disappeared in Bangladesh, which was East Pakistan at that point. So there were all these stories which we would hear growing up. So a lot of them were just stories I collected. And then I fictionalized them. And so, yes, they're all fictionalized stories, but they're stories of real people that I heard over and over. And in terms of, wait, I lost my train of thought. You asked about
the house.
Oh, the house. Oh,
literally a house that you had lived in, or did you take like the banister that seemed to organically grow out of the marble, which I love that detail.
Thank you. So I've always had a little obsession with homes, and even as a child or even as an adult, when I go into old homes, I really feel the energy in them. So I think this house is not a real house. It's a house I imagined, but however, there's a lot of old, beautiful homes in Karachi built during the time when the British were there and right after. And so I visited a lot of the houses to sort of get these details. So the house is a fictional house also. The only thing that's not fictional is the name of the house. House number 12 on block number 3 is actually the house I grew up in Karachi. So that was my house for my entire life. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, a few years after I moved, I visited my parents, and they had moved, and I knew they had moved. And so my father said to me, he said, let's go see the old house. Do you want to go visit it? And I was so excited to see it. I hadn't seen it for many years. And so we drove by, and the house had been broken down, and someone else had rebuilt something else on it. And that really made me so sad, because it wasn't my house anymore, but just, I felt I lost something. So I think I wanted to immortalize my home with the title, but the home of the novel is fictional, but the title is a homage to my house growing up.
Yeah, that's got to be poignant. And especially, I mean, even the house in the story, there's apartment buildings and condos and things going up all around it.
Yeah.
Which I think also helps make this feel like a universal story. Let us talk a little bit about Nadia without giving away too much about what happens to her. I loved all the chapters with her friends trying to come and kind of, get her sort of to be back part of that life of a young woman. And she was also born in the foyer of the house, which that is a fabulous detail, right? That she came early. And so I think I felt like the house has a special feeling, a special nurturing feeling for her. So that was a really lovely choice that you made to bond them as characters even closer.
Thank you. Yes. I think Nadia, for me, Nadia was inspired by a lot of women, because I feel almost every woman I've known has had some sort of assault on her person or her body. I mean, either verbally or not verbally, physically. And very often we choose not to talk about it. And I think especially in Pakistani culture and South Asian cultures in general, a lot of things are not spoken. So we'll kind of beat around the bush a little bit. We'll say, oh, don't sit in the front of the car with the driver, or don't go in the back of the house. So it's sort of never really said directly, like, look, this is dangerous for this reason, and don't do it because this is what might happen. But it's kind of beaten around the bush. In stories and reading, it always came up in a very, no one really said it straight out. Things like assault and mental illness, they're just never said straight out. And maybe now, I think we've all grown as a community. We do share about these, we share these things, and we do talk about these things, but we still have such a long way to go. So I wanted Nadia to be sort of individual, but also represent a South Asian woman in that way. But of course, she can't represent us all because everyone's story is so different. Right. But I wanted to tap into that a little bit, where she might have a mental illness, but no one wants to accept it because it's such a taboo on your character. Like, even though depression is as common as the flu doesn't have that kind of blemish on your character that depression might bring, right? So especially in South Asian cultures, there's such a taboo on mental illness, or even that a person might be, because it's not something you can recover from. It's like, you're crazy, you're mad, or you're not.
Right. And I thought that was very well observed. And I think, one of the reasons why I love reading books from all over the world, and not just, my favorite American authors, is that, you really get the sense that from a place of love and caring, you were going, that the family was going to keep this under wraps, because, as you said, once she would recover, she would never be able to free herself from it. And all of her prospects going forward would be tainted by this. And that seems, as Americans, that seems so foreign, right? That you would, out of love, kind of suppress this information. And wasn't there, as I recall, that you gave an example, was there a cousin or a brother or someone who had epilepsy, or, and his whole life was in fact affected when this got out? And even though I think he didn't even have it as an adult, was that, am I remembering that right?
So it's rumors sometimes. And again, I place this in the 60s and the 70s. And for sure, things are different now. There's so much more awareness, as there is in the US, of mental illness and other illnesses. So I'm not sure, maybe in the US in the 60s and 70s, I wonder if it was taboo, but I feel like still it was not as taboo as it was in South Asian cultures. I feel like the taboo is much greater in our culture. Yes, and even rumors of illness or can be very damaging. So people are very careful not to share too much about their illness or flaws, or so-called flaws, or because you can never disconnect yourself from it once you are associated with it. And especially as a young girl, I mean, her mother needs her to get married. Like, she needs to, move on in that phase of her life. So you can't have her being too, I mean, not even like, you can't have her be mentally unwell, but also it was important for me to show that you can't even have her be too independent as a young woman. Like, she, so I think Nadia as a young woman has to walk a very balanced, she has to be so careful, because she when she's talking to suitors or people who want to marry her, she can't say exactly what she wants, because she might be considered too liberal or too independent. And how are we going to handle someone like her? So I feel like as a woman, she has to, I mean, she can be educated, but please don't get too educated. You can be smart, but don't be too outspoken.
Don't be too smart, right?
Yeah, don't speak well, but don't be outspoken. And I feel as women, I feel we still, women all over, I feel, have to kind of dance that delicate dance. Like,
absolutely. I mean, look at our new Supreme Court justice, and the ways, I mean, I only caught a little bit of the confirmation hearings. And if you compare her confirmation hearings with Brett Kavanaugh and all of the antics, if she had displayed any of that nonsense, she would be gone.
Yeah. Everyone was just looking for a reason to get rid of her, right? Whereas
Exactly.
on the other side, if it's a white male, there are reasons to overlook things. Right?
Exactly.
Like, oh, that's okay. Let's just overlook this. It was a one-time thing.
Right, exactly. And something else that I admired about this book that I thought you did well, and it's difficult, is that it did take place in the 60s and 70s mostly, and I still got the sense of Nadia as being a modern for her time. And I think that can be very tricky because, of course, even the way we perceive a modern young woman in the 60s and 70s compared to now, it doesn't seem very modern, but you still made her seem so fresh and of a different generation than her parents.
Thank
And
you.
I'm not sure, like I said, I sort of looked to see how the magic carpet was woven, and I couldn't figure it out, but you did a great job with that. So something else I wanted to ask, especially as someone who I mostly speak French all day, bad French, by the way, all day. And I do all of my kind of administrative work and emails writing in French. And I wonder, you wrote this in English?
Yeah.
Did you write this in English? Or you?
I did. I thought parts of it in Urdu, but I wrote it all in English.
How was that? I mean, because is English your third language?
It's my second language, but
okay.
It's my second language, but to be fair, we learn it all through school. That's part of the British colonial legacy in Pakistan and in India. We mostly learn English as the primary language in school, and then Urdu is taught as a language, as a second language. However, we all grew up with Urdu as our first language. So I'm fairly comfortable with English. However, a lot of thoughts come into my mind in Urdu, and some of the words make more sense in Urdu. And so when you translate them into English, they don't sound the same, or the sentences don't sound the same, or they sound awkward. So so sometimes I found myself translating sentences and they didn't feel right, or they would stick out really odd. And sometimes it was not an issue. It was flowing smoothly. But what I did, I used Urdu words in the text. And there are certain words that I just preferred keeping in Urdu, like, for example, jinn. There is no English translation of jinn, so I just preferred to keep that because it's not a demon, it's not a ghost, it's not a spirit. It's just jinn, it's very specific.
It's a jinn, right?
Yes. So certain words, there's no translation, so I just kept them in.
It's amazing because the book is the lyricism of it is quite impressive. And the other thing that I thought you did remarkably well, like I said, is sort of all these concrete details that you put together to create the scenes. I mean, as I think native English speakers, this is what we admire. We learn it from Hemingway. We learn it, in school, that all of the details are really what is going to build your world, right? So I was so impressed by that. How long did it take you to write it?
Well, it took about 5 years, but I wasn't writing every day and I wasn't writing consistently. I would write, so both my children were little when I started. So I would write when they were in school in the mornings. And then for a long time, I wouldn't write. And then I would join a workshop and that would kind of push me. Then I would review parts of it. So it was just like finding whatever time I could during those it was 5 years of working whenever I could find time to write. And then of course, once it was finished, then finding an agent and finding an editor to tell me that it was okay, I should look for an agent, because I think with creative work, you never know when it's done. And I'm sure you can speak to this because you've written multiple amazing books, and you never know when it's done. Sometimes you just need someone to tell you, you know what, this is done, please send it out. So I finished it in a workshop, And then my workshop teacher recommended I send it to an editor because so I could figure out whether I felt she would tell me really, was it ready or not. And then once she felt it was ready, then I started looking for agents. So it just takes a really long time, all of it.
You know, you really have to want to write the book.
Yeah.
Because the amount of patience that it does take, you know, and as you said, for me, it's always like, if I have an inkling that now I'm making it worse, because, you know, you can keep rewriting and thinking, oh, maybe now it's like, it's de-evolving. That's the time to pass it off and to, you know, let somebody else.
So true, because I looked at some of the older drafts and then some of the newer ones, and sometimes by overwriting, you really mess it up. And I feel many times I did. So I would go back and take passages from the older draft because it just felt more fresh.
Right, exactly.
So it's so hard to find that balance because you're so, as a writer, or any creative person, we're so critical of ourselves. So sometimes that's a good thing, but often it can become a bad thing because you over analyze and over criticize, and then you mess things up.
Exactly. And I've also found, like, the first, you know, half of the book is sort of a smooth stone because it's been gone over a gazillion times. And the last chapter I've written twice, you know. So it's sort of, yes, balancing it out is really difficult.
That was my first chapter. I wrote it twice.
Right. It always reminds me of the French verb list. Like, I know the first two verbs pat, and the ones at the bottom, it's like, what, you know? So are you writing something now?
So I'm in grad school, and actually the funny thing is, because of book promotion, it's such a different kind of like, you use such a different part of your brain that I feel the writing part is kind of dying. So I've been doing the other side of things. So I haven't had too much time to write, except the things that I've had to write for my grad school, which is a blessing because it gets me to write a little bit at least. I'm still writing terrible things because I'm not in that frame of mind, but at least I'm writing. So so I am writing just bits of things, but my hope is that the next piece will be a novel in stories, and I want to there's a book that I really loved. It's The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Gaynor.
Yes.
And I love the idea of all these different women's stories who live in a building or in a complex together.
Yes.
So I was very inspired by that. So I thought I would love to write a series of immigrant stories of people who are in Los Angeles from different parts of the world, and how they kind of find each other and share their lives with each other, life with its ups and downs. And I've not thought much about it, but I think that would be really a nice way.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah, so hopefully that's kind of where I'm going, but I'm not sure how long it will take.
You know, the very first book I wrote was about a job I had, because we both went to USC. And I worked in the Slavic languages department when I was in graduate school there. And it was a time of great Russian immigration. And so my first book was a book in stories, and it was basically all the people that sort of worked at this Slavic department. So there was like the secretary and the grad student and the head of the department, and then there were immigrants who came and went. And but it was that same sort of notion, right? That you've had all these people that kind of came to LA and they didn't know what to make of it. And some fit in, some didn't fit in, some loved it, some were so homesick they couldn't bear it. And
the circumstances that brought them, right? The circumstances that bring everyone here are so different. You know, there's people who are doctors and nurses in their countries of birth, but when they come here, they can't practice. So then they often take a job of like a housekeeper or, you know, at a fast food joint, just because they have to make ends meet. So I just find it so fascinating how people try to come here to live their version of the American dream. I'm an immigrant. And I often think about it, how we leave our homes and we make a home somewhere else.
It's quite something. And like I said, now that I'm on the other side of it, it's quite something. I mean, my parents or my father had come from Poland to the United States, so I'm not that far. I'm a first generation on
Yeah,
his side.
well, that's true.
But it is it is an interesting experience, and I think especially in the United States, it's an endlessly fascinating experience to mine, because the whole country, of course, is built on all the different people that have come there.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
Everyone's an immigrant here, except, of course, I mean, the native people.
Right, whose land that the first settlers stole. But anyway, do we want to take some questions? Because I'm looking at my clock.
Sounds good.
Fran has a question.
Yeah. Hi, Sana. You built the drama up to the moment when the secret comes out so well. I was literally on the edge of my seat. I'd be interested to know, without wanting to give anything away, whether you considered other endings for Nadia. Like, for example, that the secret wouldn't come out, or other options, or was it always going to come to a conclusion in the way that it does?
Hi, Fran.
And have you
Thanks
talked about this
for-
without spoiling the whole book?
That was a very artful question, but
Yeah.
did not reveal.
That's a great question. Thank you, Fran.
Yeah.
So I wanted her secret to come out because this is fiction, and many times in real life, the secret does not come out. So I wanted at least to use my fiction in that way of giving more power to her eventually. However, the ending, the way, for a long time, I didn't have an ending for the novel. And I was like, oh, maybe this won't be a novel because now I don't have an ending. So I was just like, okay, let me just keep writing. And then one day I was just driving, and sometimes I don't like driving, but sometimes really cool thoughts come to me when I drive. So, which is a cool thing about living in LA, because I always have to drive.
There's a lot of opportunity for cool thoughts to come your way.
Cool thoughts. So I was driving and it was quiet, and suddenly the ending came to me, and I was like, I need to stop and quickly write it, because sometimes thoughts come in like dreams, they go away, they kind of just come into your mind and then they disappear. And I was thinking to myself, when can I just pull over and quickly write this down? And of course I couldn't, because I was on the freeway. So as soon as I got off the freeway, I just pulled over to the side and I put in a note in my phone. It's like 2 lines. This is how it will end. And so I think, yes. Does that help, Fran? I'm trying not to give the ending away.
Thumbs up. All right.
Thank you.
We have other questions. Feel free to type those in, or raise your little hand in the reactions menu if you want to come on screen.
I do think you make a great point for everyone who's here, who's writing, that it is like a dream. And if you don't write it down, I mean, I think sometimes we think, oh, it's such a good idea, we'll remember it, but we won't remember it. So always
Pull over.
get off the freeway, pull over, but always write it down. Yeah.
We have a question from Gohar Khan. What a fab interview. Thanks both. Here's my question. Do you think living away from Pakistan all these years has played a role in your writing? Did you ever feel like an outsider looking in, or even an intruder?
Thank you, Gohar. That's a great question. So yes, I think what happened, because I lived away for so long, and these stories were collected from my grandparents' generation, I had this sense of nostalgia, which when you live in Pakistan and when you live in Karachi, the nostalgia just dies, because there's so many annoying things that happen day to day, as they would in any city you live. So being away made me feel more nostalgic about my city of birth and my country. So, and I mean, sometimes too, nostalgic is not good either, because you kind of forget some of the things that are plaguing the country. So I tried not to only be too nostalgic. And did I ever feel like an intruder? Yes, this was a real problem. I felt like an imposter writing about my own background and my own people, which was really odd. And I kept thinking, I've been away for so long, have I lost touch with what it means to be a young woman in Karachi? And so I had friends who still live there read it, because I kept saying, I think I've kind of whitewashed it I mean, not, I felt like because I was living here, I had kind of had a disconnection with my with these stories. So it took me a while to convince myself, and I still don't know if I did an authentic enough job, but I kept thinking, this is not authentic because I don't live there anymore.
We have a question from Jack.
Hi, Sana. Happy to be here. I guess I sort of have a bit of a process question. Sounds like you collected a lot of stories from your family. And I'm just curious, as you were writing the novel, where does story really come from for you? Do you find it in the, mining the depths of character, or because you had those stories from your family, did you find that you were, sort of stringing the pearls of plot along based on things that you had heard from them? Because you're also obviously covering a great sweep of time and historical events.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Thanks for being here and thanks for your question. So I think in this specific case, the stories were already there in the research that I did and the stories I would hear from my grandparents. So I think that gave me sort of a template or a skeleton to fill in. So I started with those stories and I kind of fictionalized them. And I interspersed them with historical events, which were real events. So I think that gave me a lot of material to work with. What I had to do is manipulate the events and the stories that I collected to fit my character's narrative. So the story arc for Nadia, for example, I wanted her to do certain things and achieve at a certain point. So of course I had to, she had to become her own person to organically live through those times. And so all the characters, because they weren't real people, I had to use bits of history, but they had to become their own people. Otherwise I guess it wouldn't read like a story anymore. It would be more like a nonfiction book or a historical book. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Hello, Miss Sana. I'm so happy to be here. I have a question regarding so first of all, I have the book and I have not read it, not one page. I haven't had the time. But I'm getting a feel for it, and I'm wondering how you feel about, because I've asked you for your opinion and advice over the past couple of years regarding our woke times and how to improve ourselves in terms of all of the things that are going on in our culture and in this country right now. And so many parts of Pakistani culture are things that we're trying to move away from, like you're speaking about mental illness or so many things. How do you, in your head, how are you balancing both? Because you're my role model for being this generation's woke person, and you are, and I wonder how you're balancing your love of culture and nostalgia and family, and how you're living in the present and making yourself and people around you better.
Cynthia, first of all, thank you. I think you're giving me way too much credit, but thank you. I appreciate your kind words. I don't know how I'm balancing it. I think this was just such a personal project, and when I wrote it, I just wanted to. I didn't want to. I just wrote it for myself, which I think it made it easier. I wasn't writing it for a press or for even the US or for anyone in Pakistan. It was really for myself. So I think that was a little, because I wasn't writing for a specific audience, I was able to be very honest with how I felt and how and what I felt and what I wanted to say. So then when it was picked up by an agent and then by Hidden Shelf, my publisher, I got really worried because I said, okay, people are going to read this, and what have I said that's because I think as a woman of color, when I put out something, or any woman of color puts out something, it becomes so representative of all the women of color. So this suddenly, I didn't want it to be the narrative for all Pakistani women. You know, I was so scared of it becoming that, because it's not fair. You know, the Nigerian writer, Chimamanda Adichie, she talks about the danger of a single story, because if we only hear one story from a Pakistani author, then suddenly that becomes the primary story we connect with Pakistan or South Asia. And I think that was really difficult for me. I didn't want this to be the only, you know, the only story that we hear. So I hope there'll be a lot of other stories written by women of color and Pakistani South Asian women to kind of balance out my story. So we know that this is a really diverse population. There's not only one kind of woman or one kind of mother or one kind of narrative that we have. So I'm trying. I hope there'll be more writing, and I think there is more, but we just need to read more of it. For example, we read so many Western, like Western cowboy stories, right? There's so many of them, and I feel like, so that helps, because you see different sides, and that helps you form a more complete idea of a culture. It can never be based on just one story. And so when I wrote this, I worried that the whole culture would be represented by one story. So I was always fearful of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Best of everything to you. I hope your book sells a lot. I'm so inspired to open it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Maria Khan, not a question, but a nice statement. You talk about nostalgia. Sometimes we feel nostalgia for times we have not even lived in. I felt true nostalgia with the small details in your book.
Thank you.
And then Maria Haroon has a question about character choices. Was it a conscious decision to give Nadia a brother and not a sister? Do you think a sister may have been a little bit of an extra support, considering the nature of what she went through and the taboo on talking about it in Pakistan?
Hi, Maria. Thanks for your question. I think, yes, I agree with you. If she had a sister, maybe things would have been different. Why didn't I give her a sister? I think I wanted her to just depend on herself at the end of it, because I wanted to speak to the resilience of her as a woman and her as a South Asian woman. And she kind of, in my mind, she did it all herself. Like, she pushed through whatever she did to come out on the other side. And I wanted to give her that bit of difficulty so she could push through it.
You know, I think I want to, I understand your concern that this story becomes, you know, the sort of Pakistani story. But I feel hopeful that a lot more of you know, women of color, people of color, different experiences and different voices are being heard, you know, more so than 10 years ago, for example. I mean, I think, you know, I think one has to start somewhere.
Most
and
definitely.
I feel so happy that the book was published and you know, has an audience.
I agree.
Obviously,
for sure.
right. I mean, I'm not in your shoes, right? But I just feel like, you know, especially even for avid American readers, to read international literature of any kind, to open those doors, I just think is always a good thing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And there's a lot of literature written by South Asian authors, by Pakistani authors. And yes, in the past 10 years, it's become more and more. So I agree. I am hopeful too that but there is also so much to read. We can't get to reading everything.
Well, that is true. And again, it is a lot on your shoulders, right? Especially when you think, I'm just writing this for myself. And then suddenly you realize that there's going to be an audience, and that sense of responsibility. When before, when you just started, it was just responsibility to your own vision, right?
Exactly.
What
But
interested you.
yeah, that's so true. And it shifted, but I'm so grateful because the fact that a press was even interested in it, because I got lots of rejections. So the fact that there was a press interested in my story, I'm so grateful that they were willing to take it and share it with the world. I'm very appreciative.
But I think, I mean, I see Deborah Reed. I think we knew it was always going to get published. I think we did. I mean, I've had a couple students where I've just, I would read, I don't know, 10 pages, and I'm thinking, just keep writing, just go have your writing career, because this is, you're on it. You're on your way. You just have to be patient.
Thank you. You're so kind. Thank you.
Yay, Deborah. See, she knew. We knew.
Hi, Deborah.
I know it was
Thank
a
you
mystery
for
to
being
you,
here.
but we knew.
Thank you.
And she does have a question. Well, thank you for being such inspiring women and coming together. Sana, are you writing any nonfiction?
No, Deborah. I don't think I will ever write nonfiction. I don't know how to.
All right. And when will you graduate with your MFA?
I will graduate. So this is 2022 in June of 2023. So I have one more year.
Oh, great.
Fabulous.
Karen, what are you working on now?
Oh, well, I am also working on a novel, but I've been doing a series of essays for a website called Frenchly.us
Right.
about moving to France and buying a house during a pandemic. And that is, I'm really having a good time with that, doing something in installments that way. And then I'm hosting writing retreats in the south of France. If anyone feels a dying need to come to the south of France, which I think is everyone on earth.
Yeah, I highly recommend.
Yes, because Michael's actually, we've vacationed together here. Not Michael and I mean, Michael with his wife and me with my husband. But I know the
It
secret's
could be
out.
within
Michael.
earshot, Karen. We shouldn't talk about this.
Yeah, so that's what's going on.
Nice. Let me put that link in there one more time where you can buy both of these authors' fabulous books.
And Karen, can you share where, if people want to sign up for your writing retreat, where they would find you, where they would find it? I think that would be helpful.
Yes, they
type a link
can.
in.
Thank you. They can go to and read all about it, or they can go to well, that's what they should. Yeah, go to here. Straightforward.
Excellent. Everyone check out KarenKarbo.com. And everyone, thank you so much for attending. And thanks, Karen and Sana, for really wonderful
Thank
conversation
you.
and a great reading.
Thank you so much for hosting, and thank you for everyone who came.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day. I think it's time. I think I can punch the clock now. It's midnight.
Midnight, yeah.
Good night.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And everyone buy Sana's book because it is a revelation.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.